Welcome to the Cockney Guide to Enlightenment podcast. My name's Stephen Rosen, and in this podcast we go beneath the surface of people's lives to find out what makes them tick. My own life I wrote about in this book, Lost in the Babylon. It's through childhood adversity, organised crime and a successful life as a businessman in the city. When I talk to people, we go beneath the surface of where they got to in their lives and we find out what really makes them tick. So if you want to follow me, connect to me with social media at Cockney Prophet. And if you enjoy this podcast, please like it, subscribe or follow us and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Cockney Guide to Enlightenment podcast with me, Stephen Rosen, and my guest today is Rosemary Cunningham. Hey Rosemary, how are you?
Brilliant, good to be here, thank you.
Great,
Thanks
and
for
it's
inviting
great.
me.
Sorry, it's great to have you. I was kind of recapping on where we met recently, just before Christmas, and it's funny, isn't it, that just a little bit of conversation with someone in a kind of crowded environment just gives me an idea of, like, you know, there's really a rich seam of conversation or experience, lived experience, knowledge and wisdom that, you know, just so many people out there are carrying. And you know, I just kind of tuned into you really because I was really interested in what you're doing and you know, I've known a little bit about your journey since then. So just introduce yourself and just let us know what you're doing currently, and then we can maybe talk about, you know, the kind of the history of that, where that came from.
Brilliant, thank you. So I live in Leigh, same as you, and been around this area. I was born in Essex. I went away for about 3 years, lived in Germany for a while, but I know I needed to be away to know I could come back.
Right.
I always swore I'd never come back to Essex, but living in Germany, much as I liked it, I lived in the Black Forest, just didn't feel like me. So I came back here, and when I started my own business in 92, 93, and I was a complementary therapist, and I went back to nursing, mainly to finance it, but I absolutely loved nursing, but nursing just wasn't for me.
So is that what you trained for initially in your career as a younger person?
I went back to the hospital I was born in and trained as a nurse, yes, and absolutely loved it, but it just wasn't for me. I always had eczema, which is for me is a manifestation of being an empath, highly sensitive person. That's how it comes out for me. And I got it on my hands. So by the time I qualified, they just said I wasn't fit to nurse in any clinical area. So I kind of had to get myself back up the floor and think, oh my goodness, what do I do now?
So you just qualified?
I literally just qualified.
And then they've hit you with this, like, actually,
you're not fit. Yeah.
You can't work.
Yeah. And they tried their best for me. They tried to do something to create a job, but it was just not what I'd done 3.5 years of training and for. It just was totally unsatisfying. They created a job for me, taking people up and down from the operating theatre.
Right.
And going to see a nervous person on the night before and saying, I see you're having your hernia done tomorrow. I'm Rosemary. I'll be the one taking you to theatre. And that just was not what Rosemary had.
It's a far cry from nursing for what you trained for.
Very, very far cry. So I knew I needed to find something else.
How did that affect you, like, emotionally? And
I think it still does. I can still feel it in my body now.
Right.
It was, I'd found my dharma. I'd found what I came here to do. I was so happy. I loved it. But it was really interesting looking back. My training was extended by about 6 weeks because I got ill during my training. I actually caught chickenpox twice during my training.
As an adult, that's quite unusual, isn't it?
As an adult, yeah. Once on the children's ward and once somewhere else. And I think it was my sensitivity. And I remember getting a chest infection as well. So I was looking back on it, I was too sensitive to survive in that environment. Yeah, and I've seen other friends, the people, I still live very close to two of the people who I train with. One of them lives over the road, and the other one lives in the next road. So I see them. They're both guys, and different beliefs, just hadn't got that sensitivity that I had, and they thrived. Yeah. So I just don't think it was for me. But interestingly, it was a few months after that, I went to a party And I met a guy there, and it turned out we'd been born in Rochford Hospital 5 days apart, when our mums would have been in there for 10 days. So we were literally in the same hospital, same time when we were born.
Right.
And I didn't know what to do at that time. And I remember this guy saying to me, well, why don't you go and get a business degree? He said, you can do anything with that. And I said, but I failed my A-levels abysmally. And he said, but you've got the equivalent of a degree now. You're a nurse. And I went, really? Okay. And then I got the forms through, and I had no idea to write what to say about why I would be suitable for a business degree course. It was like going to outer space for me. And he wrote it down for me. He wrote down what to say, and I just filled it in. And I got accepted at Birmingham Polytechnic to do a business course with an option to go and live abroad for a year. Studied German. And then he dropped me off, and I never saw him again. So this kind of beautiful blonde angel who we were never meant to be together. But you know when people come into your life for a reason, a season, he was my reason. And I would never have got there without him. And just that we were, literally our mums...
Quite often you don't notice that till after, do you? It's difficult at the time to think, oh, this is happening for a specific reason, but...
Yes, and when I look back on my career and my life, those synchronicities are so powerful. It's like when you go back and you join the dots, don't you know? Why were we at Ian's party and you and I had a conversation and here we are. And I also find that happens a lot when I go travelling. I love travelling by myself. I love a road trip. To go and hire a car and drive 2,000 miles around the national parks in the States and go and see a few friends. And when I go travelling, as soon as I leave home, magic starts to happen. Right. Which is partly why I really need to go travelling again.
Do you think that's because you just put yourself in that flow of anything is possible?
I think so. I think it's my natural state.
Or are you kind of quite mapped out in your travel and just open to the experience?
I have a vague idea, but I remember getting to Thailand and I had middle of my nursing experience. That was, I got to Bangkok and I booked a half-day bus tour and I met 2 women on there, and they were living in the next town where I was learning to teach reflexology. And one of them, straight away, without hesitation, said, "Oh, don't stay in a hotel. Come and stay with me when you're down there." And you could almost see her friend going, "You don't know this woman," but she knew. We'd made the connection. We trusted. And then I remember getting a bus, crazy, incredibly dangerous bus ride, and I got to South Thailand, and I was about. I booked my ferry and I booked my hotel from this little cafe. I remember sitting there eating. I can still taste what I ate there. And I got off the ferry at the other end, and I sat in a pickup next to another nurse from Essex. She was on her way out, I was on my way back, and it was. Wow, really? And maybe there was 10-year age difference, but it was just, and I had gone back, I dipped in and out of nursing to finance my complementary therapy career. But there I was sitting in the middle of Thailand next to another nurse from Essex. And she told me where she'd been, so I mapped out those places. And I was able to help her with coming back to the UK, the readjustment process. So. Yeah. But I think I don't like too much of an agenda. I need a little bit, but I need spontaneity in my life. And I think one of the reasons I'm desperate to get away again is I find I can tap into it so much easier when I'm not round here, quite frankly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we just kind of pick up on that point. And do you think it's, when you say round here, is that like in this area? Because I know there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of really powerful stuff happening in this area, but or do you mean around here as in just in your everyday sort of frame of life where you get up and you go and do A, B, C, boom, 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 that sort of thing?
I think it's both.
Both, yeah.
I think Lee's an amazing place, but I think my soul is yearning to go to other places. And I remember hearing a little while ago that our soul star chakra, the chakra that's below our feet, the one that's 18 inches below our feet in the ground, that is programmed with the places that we're here to visit during our lifetime. And when we go to those places, it's like a part of us is activated.
Right.
And at the moment, I know the one place that keeps coming up is Mount Shasta in Northern California. It's a very, very, very sacred place.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to Llewellyn Graves, who's actually the grandson of Robert Graves, the poet and kind of artist and that, and he in Mallorca, really interesting guy. Llewellyn, he's a DJ, Nim Petit, and we was talking about mountains, and we was talking about the energy and like the energy funnels. Certain mountains in the world can be energy funnels. So yeah, I just throw that in just as a point of reference, really. But
well, it's interesting. I remember when I was in Sedona, I'm obsessed with places that have red rocks, whether it's Ayers Rock or, Uluru. Or I get really drawn. I've been to Sedona several times. It's definitely a spiritual home for me. I've done work there. I've all sorts of things in Arizona particularly. And when I came back, I was living in Hadley at the time. And it was, where can I find that connection here? And I retraced my steps a couple of weeks ago. I suddenly got a call on a really grey Sunday afternoon to go back to Hadley, which is the next town along. And I lived there for 18 years, and it was a really challenging time. My sister died while I was there, my mum died while I was there. Crazy stuff going on in my business. But I came back from this wonderful place, and my soul was just yearning for that peace and connection that I'd found up in the hills of Sedona. And I remember walking through what's now the Olympic Park, and I used to go down there, and this little spot where I meditated, I used to go down there with my incense and my flask of coffee and notebook to journal, and I'd go there regularly on a Saturday and Sunday morning and stay as long as I could stretch it out. And then I realised I was actually sitting on red rock. That's where bricks were made. It was a brick field.
right.
So I'd intuitively found myself back to that red rock energy in Hadley. You can't make this stuff up sometimes, can you?
No, I've never heard of that chakra before. I don't know why, but yeah, I've never heard of that chakra. But as we're talking, I'm just feeling into. When I bought this, we was just talking about this place that I'm in now, which has been here from certainly 1800s, mid 1800s, if not before, when it was all farmland here. And when I first came into this building, I just had this feeling, and I bought this building in an auction, and when I was, eventually doing this up, I had this connection with this building. Just being here, and I just thought, I'm going to be in here one day. I felt like,
Right.
and I couldn't, make sense of it other than it was just a faint kind of like, I got a feeling I'm going to be here one day. This is when I was living with my wife in a different place, in a different house and a different life really, and then I wound up here and. Just those kind of echoes and I'm quite sensitive, so I kind of I recognise that was something, it may be just a feeling, maybe just the energy, but yeah, it's interesting what you said about that kind of that chakra that we have that is below our feet in the ground and it lights up when you go to certain places. So I really like that idea. I really enjoy that, but. Before we kind of get into the whole, which we're already into, this whole kind of massive opening of spirituality and energy and different ways to access that, I want to just kind of go back to your kind of your business. You started to train for business and I suppose coming away from nursing. You didn't know what to do, and then this kind of synchronicities happened in your life, and then you trained for business, and then but you're still using all of the stuff that you would have used. I think your healing things, you've said you've done Reiki and kind of stuff like that, and you're kind of you've put a group together, haven't you, just to kind of bring it a bit current as well. and I don't want to. Yeah, I feel like I've just got a big stick and I'm just stirring up the mud at the moment. But it's like what I wanted to try and do was get where your, you know, how your life kind of developed from that point, business-wise, into, you know, supporting females and all the kind of work that you do today. And because I think, you know, when we was having a coffee, you said that you've had to change your job 7 times because of your skin condition.
At least, yeah.
Your career 7 times.
I'm possibly on number 8 now.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's fascinating.
It's just a guiding light, and I tend to fight it. And sometimes particularly with the nursing, it felt like I was going down a corridor, and there are all these lovely doors to the side. I wanted to do midwifery, and then that door just slammed shut. I remember my clinical tutor saying, "Rosemary," this was when we didn't wear gloves much, and she said, "There's a lot of blood in midwifery. Do you think that's a good career choice for you? Why don't you head off for something else?" And so that door closed, and then they all bloody shut. There was nothing left. And, but when I did the degree, I just didn't really relate to it at all. But I had a great time. You know, I was the oldest one there and was part of a community of people who I'm still friends with now. Probably met my closest ever friends literally down the first corridor I was put in, first accommodation. But when I graduated, I did a massage course as a holiday, and it was on Dartmoor. And I can remember sitting there on the first morning, looking out on the moors, sitting around. I'd never meditated before. We were sitting around cross-legged in this circle. But I'm going to use the word homecoming, because I think that's what you got when you found this place. Yeah, is that I belong here. Yeah, and for me it was, I like this. And then we started working physically with people, and I can remember putting my hands on someone, and they just melted under my hands. Literally, you put your hands on someone, they just go, I like this feeling. This is what I'm going to do. So once again, 3 weeks after I'd graduated with a 2-1 in business from Birmingham Polytechnic, specialising in personnel and German, I was on a course to learn to be a complementary therapist. And the only place you'll get a job as a complementary therapist is on a cruise ship. And they pay pittance. And by this time I was 29. You know, I just bought my first place by myself, and no way was I going to do that. So I had to start my own business. And it took me 6 years to go full time because of the financial aspect, you know, building something up gradually, doing lots more training, trying different things out. And then as a therapist, I started a lot of groups. I had a Bowen therapy group. I had a aromatherapy group. I think we had a reflexology group. First one was Lee Holistic Group or something, because you go from being with other people. I really missed the staff room of nursing. I really missed the 21 student nurses I was part of. The sense of belonging was enormous. And it's just taken away. That rug is just lifted in a minute. And even with my last nursing job, which I left in 99, they just decided they were going to bring patients in who had MRSA, multi-resistant staph, which was that really nasty multi-resistant infection, that the reason I'd been told I couldn't nurse in the first place. And overnight they were bringing people in, and I just had to leave like that. So I've been in this place, and that was an amazing community. It was a place called Lowell's Court on the seafront, and where my nursing role was described as half nurse, half redcoat. It was the best nursing job on the planet. And he found me as well. He approached me, the boss did. So once again, but you know, I've always craved community where I felt I belonged, where I was respected, listened to, heard, where you could have fun, where you could have a giggle with other people, where you were accepted as yourself. So there's been something in me that's wanted to create that. And I think particularly when I started the one you're interested in, Essex Heart-Centered Entrepenures, that was because I'd gone to a group in London. And for the first time, from the minute I walked in, I felt like I belonged. Like I could really be me as a business person in all my woo-woo, spiritual, bit weird stuff, totally accepted. And I have found other really straight business groups that I've been really accepted in since. But I joined a normal business networking group in Colchester, and I was the only woman there the day I went. It was 6:45 in the morning in the dark in the middle of Colchester, and I was the only woman who turned up. And they were so funny, they were so bawdy, they were so interested in me and so interesting that I joined, and I stayed for 3 years, and I went along there at 6:45 pretty much every week for 3 years.
It's interesting, isn't it, that, you know, you speak about community and noticing that lack of community when you couldn't do what you wanted to do with the nurses, and then in business, once again, you know, being in business, I've been in business, and I never really got into the business community. I went and done a couple of those kind of networking things, you know, early morning in the city, 7 a.m. before any appointments and stuff. I'd done that for a little while, and it never really felt like me, you know, and I wasn't really interested in the community side of it. But, you know, as I've come away from really being like deep involved in business, you know, I found the community is just so valuable. It's not particularly the business community, but just community in general. You know, it's just such a powerful aspect to have in our lives to support what we want to do and to energise us and kind of bounce off of other people and do things together. It's like, I think that's where we probably came from, you know. We came from small communities, you know, as we evolved as a species, and I really like that community aspect. But you've kind of, I think you've taken your business, your skills, and you created that group. And was that a women's group you created? Or?
No, it wasn't. But only 2 guys came in the first year.
Right.
And then I'd met this amazing woman called Alison Marlowe, who'd got a group of women called Global Winning Women. And she asked me if I'd be her Essex person. So I had the licence for Essex and started groups in Chelmsford, Southend, Brentwood. We even had a group in London for a while. And that's still going. That's 11 years in. And now I'm personally sort of handing more of the physical in-person groups over to other people so I can go travelling, because I've realised for the last 30 years I've pretty much, apart from when I've gone travelling, my entire life has been based around being in a certain place to see a client, 25 clients a week, to run a meeting, and I just want more expansion now. I want to be able to run that business from anywhere. But I've got it is a very powerful online group. It's still a Facebook group. There's nearly 3,000 women in there.
Yeah.
And we do all sorts of things. So and it is worldwide now as well.
Oh,
but
right.
Winning Women was very much, Alison's a pioneer. She literally had a vision of women worldwide supporting each other. And groups here, when I started, a pound from everyone who paid a subscription went to a group in Zambia. So we supported a women's community in Zambia. It changed over time, but when we launched in Lee Community Centre, they had £250 and they bought chickens and maize and they had.
I love that.
Yeah. I've been out. I'm due to go out there again this year, but we've continued to support them. We've done auctions and all sorts of things. It will continue. Things just change a bit over time, don't they? We have different. And I got involved, being an ex-nurse, in collecting an enormous amount of medical equipment and shipping it. So we've sent container loads of bicycles and wheelchairs and walkers out to people who
there's something really powerful about, like, you know, manifesting practical things and practical help, isn't there?
Exactly. And now when you see them farming, you know, and the idea now, sort of with 10 years of our support, Hilda, who runs the charity, said everything changed when Winning Women linked up with them. Suddenly she was taken seriously by people in her own country.
Yeah. And
when she took a couple of women out there with her, we went to meet the chief, you know, the tribal chief, who's also a woman. And from then on, everything seemed to change for her. It was just like there was a certain gravitas.
Yeah.
And now she's bought land and she gets her people to farm stuff. She gets the footballers to dig toilets and farm in exchange for the football kit we used to send out. And now the whole idea is this school which supports a lot of vulnerable people, it becomes self-supporting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's independent.
So
she
it's
can,
like, just supporting the building of that community out there and,
yeah, that's
and
really
empowering them to, really look after themselves, which...
exactly. And I think also sometimes not getting too obsessed when things don't go right. I think our default when things don't go right, again. But I've learnt with Africa, you just have to be very, very patient and keep the vision.
I suppose they're very resilient there, aren't they? And to kind of support them, you have to adopt some of that resilience, I suppose.
You really do. It's been fortifying, shall we say?
And I can imagine, things quite often don't, you want to get to a point, but there's a lot of variation in getting to that point in all things. Rosemary, one thing that we spoke about before, you spoke about, I think it was in about 1987, that harmonic convergence. Did that have, what was the kind of impact of that in your life, and can you explain what that was? Because when you spoke to me about it, I had never heard of it, but
Right.
I kind of related to being in a certain place in my life. And
Well, the harmonic convergence, I learnt about this from a man called Stuart Pearce, who's he channels the angels of Atlantis, but he's also the voice coach who helped people like Margaret Thatcher and Princess Diana to speak, so people actually listen to them.
yeah, I've heard him. He's got a really powerful.
He was, and he literally lost his voice as a child.
Did he?
He was mute
Really?
for a while. Fascinating man. Yeah, and he's really coming into his power now. But I had a reading with him, and I was...
So he was acting as a voice coach and a spiritual guide or something like that.
He still does.
Yeah, and still does, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I had a reading with him, and I think he must have asked me when things really changed for me, and I thought, well, it was the summer of 87, and my career just ended overnight. And he said, that was the harmonic convergence. He said there was a planetary alignment in August 87 where lots of people started to spontaneously remember things like the Mayan prophecies. And that was when my life just basically fell apart. And he said, well, no coincidence there. You were waking up to your next phase. Okay. And I can remember, a bit like you, coming back here and telling a friend about this. And she said, I remember that weekend. She knew exactly when it was. She said her daughter was a tiny little girl in a pushchair, and she knew she had to get to this place called Glastonbury. She didn't know why, and she was really angry because she couldn't go. She didn't have any money. She didn't know where it was, but she knew she had to go to this place called Glastonbury. And I've heard of someone else since who knew he had to go to Stonehenge. Over to you. What were you doing in August 87, Steve?
No, I was just, I mean, I'm not going to go in the whole story. It's in this book, if you can see it. But I was in jail. I was in jail in the summer of 87, and had just a profound experience that I just absolutely couldn't quantify. It was of a spiritual nature. I was sitting in jail and, just had this feeling, this energy, something cut through the whole persona that I was living. I was living as a career criminal. I was living as a very unsensitive being. I'd kind of just, detached all my sensitivity. So I was this quite, tough kid. I was a kid, in jail in my early 20s. And I had this experience, which I'm not going to go into the whole thing here, but I wrote about it as in that book as just one of an experience I had in life. But, I kind of lit up when you mentioned that period of time in kind of like 87, August 87, because I was sitting in there. It could have even been exactly the same sort of time, that this happened. And I just didn't recognise this stuff till years and years later. That, at the time it was just a feeling, and I just thought, batted it off and just moved on. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to hear that other people was getting something, whatever it is, in their lives, and they was using that. Because I definitely, even though that I didn't kind of go, grab hold of this thing that's happened to me and move forward with it, it certainly influenced how my life started to change. And it sounds like, you know, much the same
Absolutely.
for you, really. So I just found that as a really interesting point. And when I look back over life, as you've said, you know, when you look back at these synchronicities, you know, at the time they maybe, you know, they're not even recognisable. But, you know, I look back and I think that was quite significant, you know, especially at the place I was at in life and how I was, you know, how I'd kind of conditioned myself to be and how life had conditioned me to be. That, you know, there was something deep moving within me that I didn't even understand or recognise. And, so I find that fascinating. And I've never been a great one for astrology and all of this stuff. And, you know, you mentioned that under the earth, I can't even think what the chakra name was. What was it called?
It's called your Earth Star chakra.
Earth Star chakra.
Basically, we have new chakras in us have woken up, and that's the lowest one, but we also have them high above our head now, where you can tap into your highest guidance. So say you're meditating, there's a soul star chakra, which is up about where my hand is, about 18 inches above your head, and that is where you can kind of tap into your highest guidance and what they call the Akashic records, you know, all our past life stuff. So sometimes bringing our focus up to above our head. I do this when I'm tuning into my ideal clients, and when I'm working, I'll kind of take my energy down, deep down into the planet, connect with Gaia, you know, the energy of the earth, and then I'll bring my energy up high through there. So I'm in connection above and in connection below, and then I come and settle in my heart. So we've got all these new chakras now, which...
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, I've learned, I don't even know the names of the chakras, but just through, you know, practicing yoga and stuff like that, I've learned about the chakras, the energy chakras within the body.
That's right.
And, you know, I've done a bit of Qigong, and I kind of understand the flow of energy. And just, I think it's just fascinating. And I think a lot more people like me who are not from that background are kind of recognising just... things are lighting up in their lives, and little opportunities are happening, and and it's fascinating for me to think, you know, going right back to 87, this stuff was like boom, this stuff was lighting up in me, and I didn't even know it or recognise it.
I think it makes life a lot more exciting.
Well, I kind of, I think I've tuned into just the fact that, you know, what I was trying to do out there, and I suppose what most people are trying to do is just create this illusion of security around our lives, and mine was, you know, I've created different illusions of security around my life, and today, you know, it's I like to know that anything's possible, and live in that energy of, like, you know, being open to whatever's possible. And so I mean, that's just some of the stuff that comes through this, and I think it's difficult to actually, you know, understand what this stuff is that's happening, and then to try and integrate it into, you know, how we live, how we go about our lives, how we work, how we interact with other people. You know, this is another reason that I really wanted to talk to you, because, you know, I sense that you've taken all these experiences, and another thing that you said was, which is alive for me today in a different form, different modality maybe, RTT, rapid transformational therapy. I mean, you know, you mentioned that only briefly, and the impact it had on your life, and I find that fascinating. I find these different modalities fascinating. But was that something that you practiced, or was it practiced on you?
No, it was, I only had one session, actually. It was just very, very profound. It's so powerful. It's a type of hypnotherapy, and it took me back to the lady who was doing it took me back to a situation when I was about 6 months old with my mum and my sister. And
sorry, when did you have this? Was it to do with your skin condition?
It was someone who, I think I'd written a blog, and I'd alluded to how many times my skin had changed my career.
Right, okay.
Which is, to me, is actually a positive.
It's
always, you just have to learn to listen to it and make decisions a bit quicker as well, I think.
Right.
You know, I'm learning to make decisions a lot quicker. You know, to really listen to the signs, whether it's in your body or okay, this isn't working, what am I going to do about it, instead of putting up, shutting up.
Learning to cut loose what doesn't serve you anymore.
Yeah, but quickly. really quickly.
Yeah.
I learned that from a very successful businessman who was a client of mine. He said to me one day, just make a decision. Doesn't matter if it's wrong, just make a decision. And he grew a business from 3 people to 600. And he was one of my clients for years. So he was the voice. So that therapy, but it was, I didn't follow it through. I think it left me so shocked that within 2 days I had this enormous eczema outbreak. And my face was cracked, it was scarlet, and it just would not settle down.
And you think it was a direct
Oh, yeah, 2 days later.
result of what?
I remembered something that...
A traumatic thing, or...
Well, I don't know, looking at it from an adult, no, but I'm an old soul, aren't I? Let's be honest. I've been here a few times. And I am incredibly sensitive. You know, I'm right up there on the scale of sensitivity. And I just, straight away, I knew this was when my eczema started, that we were there specifically to work on my eczema. And when this lady suggested it, my instinct was no. But my people pleaser said yes, because she wanted to do an energy exchange and she'd got a new business. But my whole instinct was no, don't do that. But I did it anyway. People pleaser won on that day. Another lesson. And it was huge. I hardly slept for 2 years.
For 2 years?
Because my skin was so inflamed and nothing would settle it down. And also in that time came up a massive past life experience as well. And so it made me go back to the things that I really hadn't healed.
So this regressive therapy took you to a place within your childhood here.
Straight away like that.
And I don't need you to say, you know, what happened within that thing, but
nothing. I was just angry because I thought my mum and my sister were laughing at me.
Right. Okay.
I was, you're laughing at me, and that's been one of my things in adult life. I hate being ridiculed. I absolutely hate seeing other people ridiculed, including children. I can get incensed when I see people being humiliated. There's something in me that just, I don't know how I'd cope with what you've gone through in prison. It'd probably kill me, you know. You know what I mean? Just that injustice for me is just so strong in that way. And so for me, eczema means to boil over. So straight away, I boiled over. And what I've learned since is when my skin's bright red and itchy, and I was sharing this with someone else the other day, the same thing's happened to her, is to just kind of go gently inside and sit there with a pen and paper. Okay, what's going on? What's going on, face? What have you got to tell me? Why are you red? Why are you upset? And if I sit there calm and long enough, I get an answer. And it's normally that I'm really, really angry about something.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you're literally tapping into your subconscious and and your intuition.
That's right. But I think it was so powerful that I just completely ignored anything else to do with that therapy. And I didn't, and I just blanked it.
Because it sounds like, you know, a really powerful thing to do. And
it's great if you follow through, but I didn't follow through.
Yeah, when you said there was like an exchange, so you was going to give her some sort of treatment and she was giving you, I mean, was she qualified to do this?
Yeah.
She was, yeah.
It's just, what I'm saying, it's so powerful, it goes so deep. And for me as a sensitive, it was, but then there's this kind of protocol of what you do afterwards. But I was so in my state that I completely ignored that. I didn't even hear it. I didn't see the emails. It was like I was just so shut down to it. I think I was in my place, maybe experiencing what I had to at that time. And because that path taught me to really listen to this, to deal with my anger. And also this other, when I couldn't get off the sofa about 2 months later, I just thought, I haven't gone back to that little me and asked her how I can help her. So I just sat there on the sofa, absolutely bright red and glowing and not having slept for 2 months, pretty much. And imagine little Rosemary was next to me. And I just said, come on then, what can I do? How can I help you? And this answer just came, could you have more fun, please?
Right.
don't take yourself so seriously. And so if you think about it, little Rosemary was angry because I thought people were laughing at me, even at 6 months old. That's an old soul, isn't it? And she was saying, could you just, have a bit more fun? Enjoy yourself a bit more?
I mean, I hear what you're saying, and in this book I've wrote a completely different story, but the need to go back and find what I'd kind of severed and left behind, for me, was just a powerful pull that came from within me that I didn't even know. It came as a question as who am I? Who am I? Mm-hmm. And I'd gone through a whole arc of different stuff in life, from what the stuff I was talking about earlier to a very successful business person, family, blah blah blah, all of that kind of stuff, outward success, and I know now that I had left something behind early on in this life, and it was so precious that I had to go back and find what it was, and so I really relate to that journey of feeling back into inner child, whatever way you describe this energy, this energy within us that holds so much, and I think as I grew, not being able to live with that stuff and function with that stuff, I just cut it off and I severed it, but I needed it as part of to be whole in this life. I needed that stuff that I'd severed and left behind. So, I really understand the value of that journey of going back. What do you need? What do you need? Because there was no one in my life, and it sounds like no one in your life, to say, well, what do you need? How can we support you? How can we nurture you? How can we love you? How can we help you with this stuff? For me, there wasn't. And I just come up with my own solutions, and they was chaotic and self-destructive, and I just projected the opposite of what I couldn't be with, and created that in my life, and so it's really interesting and valuable. I think that this process of taking stock, even just taking stock and just going what am I lacking that I've probably got within me, and it's amazing how reaching that stuff and learning how to be with that stuff frees us to move forward. So it sounds like that's, sorry, I've hijacked that conversation, but it sounds like that's what that process has been like for you.
And it might sound something ridiculous, and maybe that was an example for me as a healer, how something as ridiculous as a little kid being angry because someone's laughing at them can turn so much chaos. Yeah. It doesn't have to be something huge, does it? It's your stuff. And when someone, we think, oh, it's only a little thing. No, it's yours, isn't it? It doesn't matter whether it was what it was, it still can have that same effect on you.
It does, and I think what happens is that effect is compounded over our lives, and the coping mechanisms that we create to kind of navigate that stuff quite often become a bit dysfunctional, and often they come out in the body, don't they? Eventually. And I've spoke to so many different people, quite a few of them on this podcast, people who have had MS, a couple of different women who have had MS and just really identified that the triggers were always there. Something triggered that illness, and fortunately they both recovered completely from that illness, which is and not through necessarily Western medicine techniques, but just found ways to heal, and I think it's so powerful that these lessons in life, if we don't kind of learn them, if we don't understand them, eventually they'll come out in stress, they'll come out in our bodies, dysfunction, and in lots of other ways in life. So, I think it's a really valuable and interesting conversation to have with someone who's going, this is my experience of this happening, which is what you're saying to me.
Yeah, something small causing so much chaos again and again. Yeah. So. And just that, another time when I just literally when you can't move, you have to stop and listen, don't you? It's like when your finances take you to the edge and it's, oh, I'm here again, or something, you know, whatever it is for you, and just to gently be kind to yourself and think, okay, we've got some chaos going on here. What can I learn from this? And as you said, that little child in you is just trying to keep you safe, aren't they? They're trying to do whatever they can to keep that danger at bay, and then to sort of talk to them and reparent that little girl. It's like, it's okay, it's safe to have fun. We're all right now. No, I'm in charge. I'm the mum here. We can do this. We can actually go and have some fun. It's safe. Because I think so many things that we've been taught, nothing's safe, aren't we? I mean, I was saying to you when we first met, we say to people, take care now, don't we? Take care. When did that appear?
Yeah.
When? That wouldn't.
I noticed that you said that to me, and I went and bought something in the shop, and as I was leaving the shop, shopkeeper went, take care.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, he doesn't even know me, you know. But
Well,
it's like,
it's almost like there's this culture of it's not safe, whether that means to get tripped up or catch some COVID or, you know, all these things. It's been so, there is a virus of fear in the world, isn't there?
yeah, I think so, yeah. And it's become, yeah, just in our kind of, as you described, in our just everyday language that's filtered through to, like, you know, as a parting, take care, you know.
I was driving on the weekend and I try and keep myself away from the news, but I listened to the news quiz on Radio 4 and I listened to a little bit of news and I turned it off. Thought, oh, you've just exposed yourself to a lot of fear, girl. I could feel it in my body. And even from a comedy perspective, there's still this underlying, this is unsafe, there's some really nasty stuff going on. You know, we're all in danger. That's why, and it's so perpetuated everywhere. You know, you walk on the newspapers and it's quite challenging to keep yourself away from that, I think. Particularly as a sensitive, I can get so dragged down that hole.
Yeah, and I think something that you said earlier about that child keeping us safe, we form, and it's something that I'm looking at the moment and just done some work on myself yesterday. I'm not going to go into it because it's like that sort of stuff, but it's like, that we form our subconscious, whether that's that inner child, whether it's, you know, whatever it is, this force, this energy within us, our subconscious creates ways to keep us safe, and that's what you just said. And based on that, we create belief systems that are designed to keep us safe, but quite often, you know, they restrict us from doing stuff that maybe we want to do. And I was just talking to Joe, who's running the cameras here today, my son, earlier about this stuff, and it's fascinating how when we can get a chance to go into that belief and find out what was there and find out what the loading or the conditioning around that, you know, that feeling or that, you know, as you said, for you, that anger, feeling sensitive about, you know, being laughed at and just, you know, when we get a chance to go back and discover that, we can actually reprogram it. And actually, you know, put something positive in its place. So that restriction, that block that we have in our lives that we keep coming up against the same time and time again, that stops us doing the things that we want to do, can actually be removed and discharged. And I find that just beautiful work for anyone to be able to access and to do. And so thanks for just describing that. You know, you're not describing the stuff that I'm working with, but I think it all goes back down to the same levels of us, you know, engaging in this world on a semi-conscious level of, like, you know, what we perceive, and there's just so much coming at us, and there's so much that we've grown up with, and so many messages, and that we just kind of shut down in a way. We shut down to a certain extent, and then, you know, we give ourselves the capabilities and the safety just to cope with what we can in life. And it can be quite restrictive, you know, it can be quite restrictive in the potential of us actually really, like, going, wow, I'm going to go out and have some fun, you know, why can't I have any fun? I do it, you know. I was like a month, 2 months ago, I was climbing a tree. I was out running, I took my shoes and socks off, climbed a tree, and I was like, yeah, I'm in a tree, Just why do people stop doing that, Because all of these messages tell us it's not safe, It's not safe to climb a tree. You're not a kid anymore, And but what great fun it was.
Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. It's I'm really enthusiastic about these conversations and just how people can change those limiting beliefs around what they think and feel is appropriate for them in their life based on that security and based on the external view of like how do people perceive us if we're behaving like this, all of this kind of stuff.
I was listening to Dee Wallace this morning, and she was saying that you can catch yourself when you have one of those thoughts. I think one of the best things you can do is laugh at yourself. Oh, Rosemary, for goodness sake, where did that come from? And she said, just imagine you've got a toilet in front of you, and you can either choose to sort of go with it and dive into the toilet with your thought, or you can laugh at yourself and turn it into something different. So that one of mine is, I just can't do this. And it was, for goodness sake, do you really want to dive in that pile of poo again? No. But you get stuck with it, don't you? You pull it apart and why have I gone there? But no, to choose something healthy, something different, something fun. What's this all about? Yes. Distract yourself. Talk to that little person. Ask, what's this about, Rosemary? What's going on here? What are you scared of? And choose a different thought, because we can redirect, can't we? We can choose a different way of being in every minute.
Absolutely, yeah. And choices are fascinating because, we make, I think probably the average person makes hundreds, if not thousands of choices every day, but they're unrecognised, a lot of them are either subconscious or unconscious choices, but they're choices and they kind of, they direct how we show up in life and what we do in life and how we speak in life. And I think it's just part of my process of trying to understand me has been to listen to what's going on and listen to the choices and where they're coming from, and whether they're pre-programmed choices from a point of, some sort of place that doesn't really serve me anymore. But when you bring those choices into your consciousness, like you're talking about, am I really, and whatever tool that you use to do that, whether it's like a bit of humour, laughing at yourself, or, when we can bring those choices to our consciousness and go, actually, I'm making a choice here. Is this choice good for me? And then if you're not sure, you can probably just feel into like your intuition. Is this choice good for me? Yes or no? And then go with that, like your business guy was saying, you just make a choice. Make a choice, but be aware of it. I'm sure that was part of like the thing that he was saying. Be aware of what you're doing. And
another is that awareness, isn't it? We can spend a lot of our life hypnotised, can't we? Just by and just hearing your thoughts, tuning into them, and saying, "Cool, where did that come from?" Yes.
It's fascinating. You. So you're this women's business community, entrepreneurs community that you've been a big part of setting up. You're kind of in a process of letting go of that and stepping into life again, stepping into a different path.
Well, it doesn't seem to want to let me go. The ladies who are taking it over actually want to put me down as a shareholder, which is really interesting. Right. So they don't want me going too far.
So they obviously value your experience and input into the organisation.
I think so. Yeah, and it's more about me just wanting to be able to travel and expand. I've lived around here for nearly 60 years.
Yeah.
I am from here, so... But the online community is thriving. It's called Winning Women. What's it called? Winning Women Heart-Centered Business Community, I think. Winning Women, anyway. Winning Women. Yeah, that's on Facebook.
Which is a nice mantle, a nice title to have, isn't it? Yeah. It's positive. It's.
Yeah, and yes, and it means the original values were community, championing each other. We had 5 C's, definitely wasn't competing anyway. It was much more about coming together, sharing. It really is the essence of heart-centered business before that was even talked about. And that's what attracted me to it.
And I like that heart-centered. I like that in the title of it, because it's otherwise, with that, it really changes the energy of what's happening within that organisation, I think.
It does, and we get some incredible collaborations. So many people end up doing collaborations with other people, and that's when you have more fun, isn't it? You share the load and all those good things, which is what we're here to do. So thank you.
Well, listen, I really hope that, whatever your choices are, whether you stay involved in that or not, or...
I'll always be on the periphery, but I read these two lovely women who've come forward, Anna and Christina. They're 20 years younger than me, and I got some new laces for my walking boots yesterday.
It's always a good start.
And if I don't put them on, they're going to walk themselves out the door.
Yeah.
So
It's always a good start.
Yeah.
Where can people sort of follow what you're doing or contact you? You're on. Have you got a website? Are you on Instagram or Facebook?
I'm everywhere. I think I'm Rosemary Cunningham, and I'm on LinkedIn. My website is rosemarycunningham.co.uk. That's will be updated, and I'll be doing a lot more blogging. I want to do lots more travel stuff as I get wandering. I'm really getting a feeling to get much more nomadic. Not quite sure how it's going to take place. I'm only sort of being shown one step at a time at the moment. Right. I think sometimes you don't get the whole path, you just get the first step, and my big lesson last year has definitely been to learn to trust myself, particularly myself. I'm on LinkedIn. Come and find me, come and say hello. And and the community on Facebook, Winning Women. Yeah, find Winning Women. Yeah.
Winning Women.
Winning Women.
Okay. Well, we'll put
Stephen.
some when this episode goes out, we'll put some links on as well. So if anyone just checks the notes, they'll be able to find you. But
beautiful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been really great talking to you, and thank you for coming and being on the Cockney Guide to Enlightenment podcast. I think you've been an amazing guest, and I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. It's been an honour. Really enjoyed it.
Take care.
Thank you, Stephen.
Safe journey and safe travels.
Yeah, I'll be back.
Take care. Lots of love. Bye.
Thanks, Stephen.